be talking about The Story of Ferdinand by Monroe Leaf. And there's some key things that we want the kids to, embed into their brains. So we're going to be talking about the nonviolence, the individuality, and this kind of response to social peer pressure. That's kind of the key pieces. So going into the background, there's absolutely, the teachers already read them the story, but they've not really done any activities with it, so we're just going to have a heyday. Alright? So, first activity is hot seating, right? And we're going to be looking at things like independence and consent, and it's going to work. I know I have it written out, but I'm going to kind of... the groups are going to be 8 kids-ish, but we're going to have 2 people from each group. Each type of person, if that's clear. And so the trick here is that 2 of the people were the ones who captured Ferdinand at the beginning of the story. This whole thing happens after the whole entire book is over, and we're kind of given a press conference. Teacher is not any of these roles. We're the ones who call people forward. Now, they could have done a little research. We can give them a little bit of time to get in their role. 10 minutes feels like a lot, though. And sort of understanding what a reporter does, looking up some of the history of the time frame, but they're in separate groups of 8. Or 7, right? We can adapt to different sizes because we have 2 per job. Okay, so the teacher is going to pull kids up randomly to kind of, this is a press conference kind of thing, and they're going to respond to the questions. But they don't know what the questions are, and the reporters aren't sure where I'm going to steer it. And I'm going to steer each set of 8 in a different place. So that's what's going to keep it fresh. So if you're the second set of 8, you're like, oh, I know what I would say to that question, but they're not going to get that question, because I'm going to be like, okay, reporters, ask more questions about the bees. Do we know if the bees were okay? And then I put the historian up there. And suddenly the conversation goes a very different place. But the grounding of my side coaching, as it were, is always going to be the same. I'm going to be pushing them to think about, are you allowed to have your own personality, your own independence, your own ideas? And when we have the people who captured, we're going to ask them, we're going to kind of push them to acknowledge that Ferdinand never said yes to this. This wasn't something he actively agreed to. And how the kids respond. But we can steer each conversation to be about independence and consent. But this first activity is mostly to give them a deeper understanding and background on the whole story, right? We can pick it apart while having some fun. The second activity, okay, so it's doing double duty, all right? And so they are physically going to be making kind of a backdrop, the set, as it were, but that's not the trick of it. So this objects of character, we're going to try to think about who is Ferdinand. And yes, this time we're going to be focused on that kind of peer pressure piece a lot more seriously. And we're going to say, okay, can we bring in some object? Maybe I give them a day or 2 to bring things in. But then we also have the whole classroom of all of my objects and around the room. And they can bring those forward. But we're also going to have butcher paper to draw things. Well, what are they drawing? They're drawing things to help define who is Ferdinand. And it's like, well, the book's only 32 pages long. There's not a lot. So we just make a giant Ferdinand? No. You're going to have to add stuff. Who were Ferdinand's parents? Tell me about them. What about his grandparents? Did any of his family go to the bullfights? Was that his father? There's no wrong answer here, so we let them explore. Maybe somebody decides to draw a family tree for Ferdinand. Does Ferdinand have any friends? Does he have cousins? when he got to the bullfight, tell me about how he was thinking. Was everyone expecting him to fight? Right, and so we can steer this conversation as they're drawing, as they're thinking about things that connect. We can move this along. And as kids come up with ideas, we can have them reflect to the whole group. Right, we can have them talk to the whole group about what they came up with. It was in one of the... oh no, that's the other class. I'm so sorry. I can feel my classes blending together. But, okay. So, that's all building up to something bigger. The third activity is going to be a kind of new way to do pantomime and tableau. So, we know what tableaus are, we know what pantomimes are. Fantastic. I'm just going to kind of highlight the difference. These are in groups of 3 to 5 kids, and each one's going to be given a section of the story. Okay? They're not going to be given any time to rehearse. That's not the sort of thing. It's way more improvised than that. But the story is going to, after each section ends, it's going to end with the characters doing something and then freezing into the tableau. The next set of actors will have to replace them. And then they start their section in that same tableau. Well, how do I get from here to what I'm supposed to be covering? Well, that's where the side coaching comes in, right? But since this is the last one and I want to focus on nonviolence, I might let them stray really far away from the original story. Can sitting on a bee be something more than that? What's something else he could sit on? Come on, quick. We're doing it live. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So we would continually play with these different ideas. But each one is only live once, and then we move on to the next one. But we can film it, so we can watch the whole thing again. But as the story progresses, it might start off being a very literal version of this bull who was in a field sniffing flowers. But by the end of it, it could be about nonviolent protest. And in any direction that goes. Because we allow each one to steer towards something more concrete that the kids would know of. Here, we're probably thinking about things like how Hawaii became a state and a territory. Maybe some people would want to reference what's happening at Red Hill or the TMT. These are protests that are very active here. But before we forget the whole point of this, let's talk about how different this activity is than... I've done pantomimes before and I've done tableaus. I've never done something quite like this. Usually pantomimes are rehearsed. We're not. We're going to use pure side coaching. Usually tableaus isn't a way to switch out actors, but we're going to do that. And I think, it's what Dorothy Hefcott, I hope that's how you say her name, what she said. Anybody who innovates is going to get crucified at first, till it's proven. I think there's some really cool ideas here. And I think that it's going to seem not that clever. But what we're allowing is, through all of these projects, we have to allow, as she was referring to one of her heroes, is this person had the innocence to see it fresh. And isn't that what we want? Isn't this idea that the students are going to come up with ideas? In other words, I can learn from them. So I can't nail the script to the door. I can't define it. It needs to be flexible enough that when they're doing it, I'm so sorry about the airplane. That was unexpected. So, there's so much flexibility in what could come next that I don't want to say, well, here are the 5 things, here's the chart, and they're going to learn. We're going to side coach them and push them in a certain way, but if they say something really interesting, then it could go a different path. That's why for the first activity, there's multiple iterations. So if somebody says something really interesting, I'm going to do that one there. All right. I hope that I've covered all of it. I really liked this story, and it helps that it's 90 years old almost. And so it's pretty ingrained. It's pretty easy to get copies of it at this point, to find the story, and it can be related to so much of our present day world, and it teaches so much that it's a very easy story to comment on. And I wanted that, and I wanted these different aspects of social justice to be something we can talk about. And I feel like these activities talk about how to become and understand a character better. That's the second activity. The first activity, how to just understand the world and the history that it's made. And the third activity is really, let's put this on, but with a little less rules than the original story, so that we can focus on what we think is important as creators. All right. Whew. Thank you so much. And till next time. Bye-bye for now.